Welcome to The Chat, a place to gather and discuss topics relevant to us as women, both personal and professional. I'm Tammy West with a warm welcome to our premiere, and it probably makes sense for me to tell you a little bit about me and why this is so important to me. So first and foremost, as long as I can remember for my whole life, I have been a woman. So it kind of makes me an expert, right? But you know, I got to tell you, no one ever really spent time with me and said, this is what it means to be a woman. These are some of the issues that you might struggle with. And so I found myself over the years being, for example, angry when I felt like women weren't treated well. I have been communicating at times in ways that did not serve me well at all. I have lived a stressed out life. As a young girl, I developed severe anxiety disorder, which culminated in a mental hospital stay in 1995. And it wasn't until recently that I really recognized part of the problem was I didn't recognize my role at that time in my life as mother and worker. I just couldn't figure it out. And what was really interesting to me is I've dedicated the last 20 years of my life to personally and professionally to helping women deal with issues like worry and stress and anxiety. And yet, even at points in the last 10 years, I have lived a stressed out life, and I don't want that kind of life. So all that stuff together prompted me back in 2009. I thought, you know what? I don't understand this. I want to study it. So I went back to school, and I finished in July of 2013. I got my PhD. And I studied women and identity, and in particularly how we talk to each other, and even more specifically, I studied how we talk about stress. So all that together is what brings me to this point, and I have really been just excited and sort of mesmerized when I watch women talk. So that's why I've been interested in women's conversations. Why did I choose to call it The Chat? You know, what about that word, the chat? Well, the word chat means an informal conversation. And I love that image of an informal conversation. You know, it's just me sitting in my chair and you sitting in your chair, and we're just kind of talking. And if you've been with me anytime, like if you came to my webinar, if you were able to engage in that webinar, which by the way, if you weren't able to be there, if you go to my website under resources, you can get all of the webinar information. But I talked several times about this book that I finished reading called The Red Tent. I want to provide you during the show resources for women. And a lot of times I'll provide you resources written by women. And let me tell you why I talk about this now. Anita Diamant is the author of The Red Tent. And what she does is she takes a biblical time and story. There was a biblical time with Jacob and a bunch of his wives. They had a daughter named Dinah. So what she does is she takes that story and she makes it into a fiction story. So it's based on Jacob and Leah, but it's not a biblical story. It's fiction that she's written. So she tells a story that she thinks Dinah, the young girl, may have told. And one of the most important things to me in this book is she talks about women going to the tent. Now, in reality, when you really look at it, it probably wasn't all that it seemed to be, because they were forced to go to this tent, like during, female times and childbirth and all that. So we won't talk about that, but the fact that they went to this tent regularly meant that these women, they talked and they bonded, and the older women taught the younger women, and they spent time together. They chatted. We don't really do that today. We don't have time, maybe, I don't know, but we don't engage with other women to chat. And that's really what I want for us here, is I want us to have a chat. So you probably are already thinking, well, there's kind of a problem here, right? Because we're not in a tent together. You're there and we're here. So here's how we're going to make this work. Your responsibility is to send me questions, send me stories. My responsibility is to talk about them on the show, okay, to the best of my ability. If I get a million questions tomorrow, I can't address them all. But that's my part of the responsibility, is to address them here on the chat. Now, by topics relevant to women, let me tell you what I mean by that. When I started speaking and training, I had women come up to me at the end of an event Or maybe after I got home, they would send me an email or go to my website or Facebook or Twitter, and they would tell me stories and they would ask me questions. So I've been doing this for about 10 years, and I've come to find that most of the topics relevant to women fall into 4 categories. So let me tell you what those 4 categories are. And these categories are also in the webinar. I based the webinar off these 4 categories. The first one is women and identity. And that's kind of what I shared with you a minute ago. Identity means, who am I as a woman? What is my role if I'm a mother or a wife? Or maybe I'm trying to juggle being a daughter, taking care of a sick parent, and I still have kids. My very identity, who am I? The second topic is women and communication. So maybe you can't say no, or you have trouble asking for help at work, or maybe at home you're doing the guilt thing, to get your family to pitch in, and that's totally not working for you. Or maybe you're expressing anger in ways that you don't like. The third broad topic is emotions. And that could be everything from you are feeling a lot of anger or worry or anxiety or stress, or maybe it's hormones and fluctuations and how to kind of deal with that. And the last category is your relationships, particularly with those difficult people. Because maybe it's not you. Like, you're fine with who you are and you're a great communicator and your emotions are cool, but it's them, right? It's not you, it's them. So maybe it's a boss or a coworker or a spouse or a parent or a friend, that kind of thing. So those are the 4. Okay, the 4 broad ones are your identity, your communication, your emotions, and your relationships. Now, what I want to make sure you don't think that I expect you to send me a question and lump it into those categories. The reason I tell it to you this way is because when I say topics for women, I want to make sure you understand I don't mean everything. Like, I can't help you with your latest mammogram or your surgery you're about to have. I'm not that kind of doctor. I found something interesting I wanted to study, so I went back to school kind of doctor. So I just wanted you to kind of understand the topics relevant to women personally and professionally revolve around emotions and communication and relationships and difficult people and identity. So that's kind of the area that we're going to focus on. Now, how will you communicate with me? Well, you can do it in several ways, and it's going to come on the screen so you can see it. First of all, you can just leave me a comment here on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. You can tweet me. We have our very own Twitter. It's at the Chat for Women with the number 4. Facebook, Tammy West Seminars is where you can find me on Facebook. You can go to my website, and there's a contact form on my website, or you could leave a comment on my blog. There's also a sign-up form that you can send. Any of those will get me your email and your comments. So those are the ways to contact me. What about how the show is going to go? It's a living, evolving thing. This is our place to chat. So I'm just one woman. You are thousands of women. So I see it as being probably at least once a week, at least to begin with, maybe more if I find something really interesting to talk about. Lengthwise, I see it being probably under 15 minutes, although I reserve the right to change my mind about this because I intend to do interviews. So maybe we'll stretch that out a little bit. I'll interview another woman. Or if I'm out speaking and something interesting is happening, maybe I'll do the chat on location. The goal is for us to stay in touch, for us to chat, for us to engage. That's what I want for us. So as we wrap this time up, let me talk a little bit about chatting and give you another resource. There is another woman, Anita Diamant was our first author, who I just absolutely love. Deborah Tannen is someone else I love. I joke with my husband that I have a girl crush on her. I think she is just fantastic. She is a linguist at Georgetown University, which means she studies language. Her focus is really gendered language. And there are a couple of resources I want to recommend to you from Deborah. One is her book, You Just Don't Understand, Men and Women in Conversation. I have an excerpt from that. If you're not a big book reader, you'd rather listen, if you go to Audible, audible.com, she has very similar information, but it's called He Said, She Said. The great thing about Deborah is, even though she's a professor and she's an academic, She does not talk like an academic. She's so easy to read and she is so fun to listen to. I was not bored for 1 second, and I have taken notes and learned so much from her. So I want to read to you what she says about women and how and why we talk. She opens up, and she's a great storyteller, okay? So she opens up one of her chapters like this. She says, a married couple was in a car when the wife turned to her husband and asked, would you like to stop for coffee? No thanks, he answered truthfully, so they didn't stop. The result? The wife, who had indeed wanted to stop, became annoyed because she felt her preference had not been considered. The husband, seeing his wife was angry, became frustrated. Why didn't she just say what she wanted? Unfortunately, he failed to see that his wife was asking the question not to get an instant decision, but to begin a negotiation. And the woman didn't realize that when her husband said no, he was just expressing a preference, not making a ruling. When a man and a woman interpret the same interchange in such conflicting ways, it's no wonder they can find themselves leveling angry charges of selfishness and obstinacy at each other. We can't lump all men or women into fixed categories, but the seemingly senseless misunderstandings that haunt our relationships can in part be explained by the different conversational rules by which men and women play. And this is my favorite part. This wraps this all together. Men grow up in a world in which a conversation is often a contest, either to achieve the upper hand or to prevent other people from pushing them around. For women, however, talking is often a way to exchange confirmation and support. That's the whole reason that I would love for us to spend this time together, is for confirmation and support. So when you leave here, please remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and anytime you can give us a thumbs up, that increases our rankings and that allows other women to find us, and it lets us chat with more women. I am honored more than you know that you chose to spend your time with me. And until I see you next time, I hope that all of your chats are confirming and supportive.